All right. And now we welcome back CJ Albertson to the CITIUS Mag podcast, fresh off of a seventh place finish at the New York City Marathon in 2:09:53. An incredible year. Fifth place at the US Olympic Marathon Trials, 2:10:07. Seventh place overall, and top American at the Chicago Marathon, 2:08:17. And then, well, I forgot before that, it was top American and seventh place overall, 2:09:53 at the Boston Marathon. And just before we started recording this, I said to CJ, I was like, there's like 9 weeks left in the year. Are you done? Probably not, it sounds like. CJ, how are you feeling about this year in general so far?
It's been a good year. Obviously, starting with the Olympic trials, I would have liked to make the Olympic team, but it was still a solid performance for me. And then moving on to Boston, um, felt like I had a really good race. Not necessarily like the best of training, but I think I executed, about as well as I could on race day in Boston. So I felt good about that performance, and got under 210 for the first time. Um, which, it was I don't know, which I knew I could do, but it was good to like finally do it. And then yeah, going into the fall, um I was just ready to, to do something better. And I kind of signed up for both Chicago and New York, just thinking that doing that double would um just kind of keep me motivated because you know, you look dumb if you don't do it very well. And so it's kind of just like I I like kind of doing things my own way and doing things that I feel that I can do and that I'm good at. And I think when I'm doing things that fit me, that also motivates me to just be myself better. And so I felt like that worked. I mean, in Chicago, I probably had probably the best training block that I've ever had. Um, I was just a little bit faster and everything, and then that led to a 2:08:17 day. The day was perfect. We had a pacing group, so the conditions led to faster running, and I don't even think I necessarily had a great day in Chicago. I think it was just a kind of an average but very solid race. But it wasn't anything spectacular for my fitness, I don't think. So that was nice. I mean, I ran a very solid time, placed decently well, and I felt very, very within myself. Like, yeah, that's a repeatable performance. And then going into New York, I knew the field was really good. Had never run the course before, so didn't really know what to expect. And um, yeah, I think I competed fairly well given all the conditions. I don't really like to go out really slow. I think it isn't necessarily advantageous for me because I'm better, the longer we go and the more kind of tough the course is, the more, I mean, not the course, but the more tough the conditions are, the more the race gets broken up, and the more we get running one-on-one, where everyone's by themselves. That's where I really do well because that's how I train, and I don't really slow down a whole lot. I mean, I slow down a little bit, obviously, but other people slow down more. So in a really slow race where the pack stays really big for a long time, that's, that's not where I typically thrive, mainly just because other people do better. And I mean, the nine guys that beat me, like, I mean, you can go through their lineups, you can go through their stats. They're all very, very good. So, um, in a race like that, a pretty tough course, I felt, and given how slow we went out, and I still ran before coming into the day. I think it would have been the fourth fastest American time all time on that current New York course. Before Connor and Clayton obviously ran faster. But, and for how slow we went, that's actually a pretty solid performance. So yeah, I felt good with my New York performance, even though on paper, I got 10th. It doesn't really feel or look that great, but I think it was actually a pretty solid day when you really reflect on it. So yeah, a good year for, kind of solid performances, but all of them felt very within myself. Again, very repeatable, things that it's like this is just where I'm at. Like this is my baseline. And I feel like that feels pretty good.
This must be just like the general nature of a marathoner where it's like there's never 100% full satisfaction with a performance. The race is so long, they can always pinpoint to these little things that you wish you could have done better, or, if you would have changed things up or made a move here or there, like it would have led to a faster time or a better place. I just literally recorded with Clayton Young and he was doing the same exact thing. And Connor Mance, same exact way, reflecting upon Paris. So, of these four performances this year, which is the most satisfying?
Mm. I don't, they're just all different. I don't know. Yeah, I mean it's hard. I mean Chicago like I think looks the best. Like 2:08:17 is significantly faster than anything that I've ran. And I think the build up to that was really good. It's hard to put a measure on it. Like it's hard to say like was that Chicago race really better than my New York race? I think for both Chicago and New York, I was more fit and in better shape than I was for both the trials and Boston. Boston, I benefited from a pretty good, from a decent tailwind, um, and paced that race really well. And when you get a tailwind at Boston, pretty good conditions, it can be a pretty fast course overall. So, um, even though that was my first time under 210, and I felt like I raced really, really well given my fitness, I'm not necessarily satisfied with that because it was um again I just wasn't like super fit. And then between Chicago and New York, I don't really know. I mean, Chicago looks a lot better. I ran faster. I placed seventh. But I think realistically, New York, I raced probably just as well. Because I'm not sure how much better. But I mean, in Chicago, I couldn't have done any better either. I mean, I wasn't going to catch sixth, and so I think they're both equal. They were just polar opposite types races. I mean, Chicago, you don't have to do anything for 17 miles. You just have a pacer. You just follow them, and it's fast. But like, there's, it's just different.
What was it like, I guess, handling the conversations with both, the elite athlete coordinators for Chicago and New York? Like, I know most of these pros get appearance fees to show up and train for both of those races. And sometimes there's, if you're a top star, there's a little bit more exclusivity. Were both Chicago and New York like fully game for the idea of like, oh, there's only one person crazy enough to attempt being top American at these races, and it's you. So how did you broach the conversation around that double?
Uh, yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would say they were fully game, but yeah, there was sort of the sense of like, well, it is you. So, we're gonna entertain the idea because, it's you and you've demonstrated you can do stuff like this. So, I think, early on Chicago was fine with it because they were first. So, we were like, okay, well, it makes sense to have some good deduction clauses and stuff because we don't want like um and I mean I said that right off the bat like let's you know because I always know I'm gonna run well, so I'm like let's knock up the reduction clauses. You guys feel comfortable like I'm gonna like I'm not just gonna I'm too competitive to just do that anyways. So yeah, so Chicago was pretty easy because I mean that was the first race. They didn't really have much to lose other than me just I don't know. So New York was a little bit more, they had, even though it's me, I kind of hesitations like, okay, well, yeah, we think you can do it, and you believe that you can do it, but also historically, no one really does this well. And they sent me a list of people that had doubled. None that really did Chicago and New York because I don't even know if anyone had really done it, but people that had done Berlin and New York, and they all pretty much did bad, or at least not good. So I was like, well, they're not me. I mean, even though it was people that are way more accomplished than me,
Yeah, like wasn't
like they're
Bekele on
not
that
me in
list? Because
terms
he
of
did Berlin, New
yes,
York.
yes, yeah, yeah. There were very good people on that list, but you know, they weren't me in a sense of like uh just how I can do things. So yeah, so that one was a little bit more negotiating and just kind of like doing things that made sense. And at the end of the day, both of the contracts were fair and made sense, and both parties were, I guess protected in a sense, but also, if we both held up what typically the exchange is for these races, then we both got something good out of it. So, yeah, I mean, overall, I think it was pretty, I'm not gonna say easy, but it just made sense. So, yeah.
So now when people look at this and they see that you went from 210.23 to 208.17 in 1 year, I know you can point to the fact it was like, Chicago's just like a flat course and, things have maybe there's been some advances in the shoes that you're wearing. What are the elements that led to this jump? Because I feel like for a long time, people did say, like, oh, yeah, CJ, when he nails it, is going to be fully capable of going 208 or faster. And we finally got to see it. So, what do you think were the elements that led to the jump?
Again, I mean, a lot was the racing conditions. It's hard, like, to not just put it all on that. I mean, and it's not all on that. My training was better. My Some of my speed workouts were better, more consistent. Before I'd maybe get in one good speed workout a week, and this this block I was doing the last like I think 7 weeks leading up to Chicago, I was doing speed workouts for the most part 2 times a week, and most of those were double workouts. So session in the morning, session in the afternoon. Um, so I was getting 4 decent sessions in, and then a long run in. So yeah, so my training was good. I felt more fit, more comfortable, pretty much at every type of workout, every pace. So I was just I think I always had like the aerobic or the not even necessarily aerobic because everything's really aerobic when we're talking about marathon training, but I always like I could hold marathon effort pretty well. Like I've always been able to do that, but holding like 450 or like yeah, right around 450 pace, like I wasn't quite as good as that. I wasn't didn't quite have that fitness before. Whereas coming into Chicago, I could hold pretty close to 450, relatively comfortably. And that's pretty much what we did. We went 63:20 through the half, um, right at 450 pace. Fell off that a little bit after like 17 miles or so, but finished decent. So yeah, that was it. Just a little bit better fitness. And then finally like the right racing conditions and right race and paced it decently well.
So, how has this year reframed maybe some of the thinking around your potential? I know, like, there's just always like the thought, like, we're getting faster. Americans across the board are getting faster. But where do you sort of see the next step that you want to take, in the next 12 months with however many more marathons you're going to run? Like, if we had this conversation this time next year, like, what do you hope that next level is?
Mm, I think it's for the most part just kind of doing just building off of this fall. And I was able to kind of establish a routine that I felt like worked where I could get in those quality sessions, and get in 4 quality sessions in a week, and get about uh what was I getting? Around like 20 to 25 miles worth of work, like faster than marathon pace, like under 440 pace, or if I did like a long tempo, maybe those are closer to 445 pace. But basically 20 to 25 miles of good work, a bit quicker than marathon pace, and then I'd have, and that didn't include my long run, which was my long runs have always been really good. Um, so like if I can just kind of continue doing that, and make little tweaks to things, but just continue doing that. And if I knock those paces down, you know, 2, 3 seconds a mile, that's another minute 15 seconds off of a marathon. And so like it's really just, if you just get like very incrementally faster in those short little paces, like 5 seconds a mile in a marathon is over 2 minutes. And so I think like those are things that are like reasonable that when I'm looking at like future steps, it's like it seems very manageable because you don't have to get like a crazy amount faster. Really only have to get a couple seconds a mile faster.
Yeah, obviously the marathon's like one of the most grueling distances in the whole entire sport. But like with just this repetition that you've had each time out, like how much more comfortable does conquering the distance feel? Like I feel like for you at this point, the marathon itself is the distance isn't daunting whatsoever, and it's just about digging and pushing past, that 450 threshold that you keep, sometimes thinking about.
Yeah, no, yeah, definitely the distance is not a concern. It's just it's just how fast can I run? Like if I'm doing any type of a workout, once I get down to like 445 pace or a little bit faster, like it's not comfortable. I mean, I think I got to where like around 440 pace, like I could do that um for a little bit. But like if I did like I don't know, like longer than a few miles, like 440 pace wasn't that comfortable. But so like but in a marathon race, like you end up running some miles like at 440 pace or faster. I mean in New York they had I mean there was hills and some of them were downhills, but some of their miles were like 420 or faster. So those that like speed component just like not quite there. And so, um, and to be competitive on like the world stage, like you gotta basically be able to average 440 pace, like 440 flat for the whole marathon. Um, so it's that that doesn't holding a pace for 26 miles isn't uh doesn't isn't hard to me. It's just getting down to that pace. So Um, yeah, I think I just have to get a little bit quicker and get down to that pace. But when I do, I feel like I'll be able to race that.
So if we unpack Sunday's race, it seems like for the first 15 or so miles, there's a lot of yo-yoing in terms of just like the pace. Everyone was bunched up. There'd be some fake moves being made, and then it slows down and everyone's able to regroup again. Frank accelerates on the bridge. You kind of covered that move along with everyone else and swallowed him up. It was the downhill coming off of the bridge that splintered a lot of the pro men. What happened at that point in the race for you? Because that is where sort of like it got interesting for everyone. Clayton pointed out something of just like how fast people were going, shooting down on the other side of the bridge. What did you make of that point?
I was already I was already off the pack at that point because yeah, that bridge was pretty long, and then you run through the bridge for a while. That was like all basically like all mile 15 and 16. It's like I think it's a 2 mile long bridge. Um, so they at the very start of the bridge they started going like pretty quick and I didn't really go with them. Um and they just kind of gradually accelerated like throughout the whole bridge. And we're running pretty quick up and then kind of maintain on the flat. And then yeah, on the down like really took off because I started moving pretty well on the downhill part too, but then they were pulling away even more because I think I ran like I don't know, somewhere in like the 430s or so, like 435. Um, and they were moving away. So I don't really know because I wasn't with the front pack at the time. But it wasn't really surprising. I mean, I don't even know who made the move. Did Evans make the move?
It
Chibet?
was it was Frank and then Evans. Once they
No, on the
swallowed up
downhill.
Frank on the downhill side, it was Evans and Joffrey Camore who made the move. And
Yeah.
Tola, I think, was still sort of in it for a little bit. And then coming off of First Avenue, that's where like it really did splinter down to like six guys. So what did First Avenue look like for you when now there's just sort of like, all right, we're working in a couple different packs. Were you like behind Clayton's pack?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first, I mean, Chibet does almost the same thing every race. Um, he surges on a few downhills early in the race. And they're almost always fake moves. It's like, okay, 10 miles in, like you're not going. But like I remember he surged and I was running next to somebody. I think maybe I don't know if it was Rory at the time, but I told someone I'm like this is coming back. Like every time I run with him in Boston, like this is just what he does. But we're at like mile 9 or whatever. Like they're all going to come back and no one else is going to lead. Like they're not going to continue at this pace. So like I just let them go. And then once someone kind of goes with them and then he kind of looks around, then like they all just kind of stop running. And so they did that. They did it a couple times and they came back. And but then at the last big downhill is when he tries to put in like a move. So that coming off that bridge was really the last big downhill you before you can make a move before you get in the Central Park. But by that time there's only there's 2 miles left in the race, so it's a little late. So usually he tries to break it open a little bit before. But anyways, so for me coming off, I ran that downhill pretty fast and we got on to First Ave. And some of the guys that like were with me that I had kind of like somewhat broke away from on the downhill, they kind of caught back up to me. And then Rory Linkletter came by and he was running pretty good on First Ave, which was great. So I just tucked in behind him because we were running into a headwind basically the entire race because we were running I think north-ish, and so we had a basically just a straight on headwind the whole time. So First Ave was kind of the same, and it was great because running into it by yourself would just be a long stretch. So I just kind of sat behind him and just really didn't do anything, just kind of stayed there. Um, there might
You
have been a
peek into
time
the
where I left for
Bronx.
a little bit. I think at a water bottle station we got shuffled and maybe I was in like leaving our group for a little bit. But
Yeah, so then after that, you guys peek into the Bronx. You were sitting in that like 13, 14 position for a good chunk of it. And then it's really on Fifth Avenue, I feel like that you made up a lot of ground.
I think it was a little bit before, maybe at the end of first half, maybe we caught a group, maybe we caught picked up a guy or two. Yeah, I think we picked up a guy or two, and then it kind of like weaves a little bit, and I think maybe I caught another person or so, and then we had a pack of three. Yeah, we had a pack of three going on to Fifth Ave, um, and that was just a mile long climb, and in my mind, I was basically just like, if I s- if I stick with these two guys, and Frank was one of them, um, if I'm with them at the top of the hill, like I'm gonna beat them because once we get in the last 2 miles, I usually always win that race, like whoever is around me or slightly in front of me, and so, um, but I mean sometimes in the past I've been dropped on some uphill parts, so I just tucked in and just basically got to the top of the hill and I actually felt fairly good. Like I felt better on the hills than I have in the past. And then when we got to the top, I pretty much just like went and we also were going a little bit different direction, so we didn't have a headwind anymore. So once we got to the flat and then the little downhill, then I'm like, all right, I'm gonna just kind of go and break away. And then the uh Bashir Abdi was in front of me. He wasn't too far ahead. I could see him the whole time, and I thought maybe I'd come back on him, but he ran pretty well the last couple miles too. Um, and then Kiptu was coming back pretty hard, but I didn't catch him until maybe mile. It was the 26 miles, like maybe 25.5 miles or so. And I passed him, and then Abdi was going. He was going faster because he was catching Kipchumba, I think. Whoever was yeah, he
Yeah.
was catching him, so I think that gave him motivation and he was going after him and he was gone. So then
Yeah,
I
so
just
you
kind of
won your pack. It was you, Ryan Ford, Colin Benny. Like all those guys were just pretty close by.
they weren't really in my pack actually. So my pack was like Frank, like once it kind of separated and all we all
Oh,
broke up into little groups, it was Frank, Rory, and who was
the New
what's his
Balance guy,
yeah,
Johnny Meller.
Johnny Miguel, him. So yeah, we were all in a pack together. But Ryan, Colin, that group was like they were very close. I mean, I never saw them, but they were basically like 15 seconds behind us. basically the entire way. I mean, I think our splits were almost identical going all the way into the finish. So, but I didn't really know they were there, but yeah, so we were partly broken up, but they were right there. And yeah, so I won my pack and I guess held off the pack coming back.
So after crossing the finish line, I watched the interview that you did with Let's Run, and you were pretty much like, yeah, it was a good day, not great day. Like you were fairly content with it. And then it's just sort of, I think, thinking about like Clayton and Connor and just like the gap to them. And I guess the question is like how to close that gap moving forward. Right now, I guess like what they're just maybe a tad bit ahead. What do you like? Where do you see sort of like the improvements that you can make to close the gap? I mean, I was just trying to think of like with training, like you're doing everything you can. Have you, are there new things that you kind of like altitude, right? Like you've never done that, right?
Um, yeah, potentially. I mean, I think
It's hard with
um
your job, your family.
yeah, I mean, I'm probably not gonna live at altitude. I mean, yeah, I can do some more simulated altitude work, but I think it's really just just speed. And so, I mean, again, this was a good block that I haven't necessarily had blocks quite like this one before. So I think I can build off of that speed. And again, like I don't need to get that much faster. It's just like, if I can get all those paces 5 seconds a mile faster, that's, that's what like 2 minutes or a little more than 2 minutes in a marathon. And so then that kind of closes that gap. And maybe it doesn't fully close the gap. Like they can probably still handle some surges and faster pace changes, but overall, just racing a marathon, like it it closes the gap enough that like I can just run a marathon and eventually and be pretty close or right there. Um, and then it's just building off that. And I think there's always things in training that you can like tweak and get better. But yeah, I mean, it's just getting faster. I don't know.
On the yeah, because like on the training side of things, like you've already kind of you know how to coach yourself for the marathon. There's the obviously continuing to make more advances in footwear. That's out of your control. Is then like, are there any of the other things like the fueling or the I don't know, like are there other little things that you're thinking of experimenting with to try and get that marginal improvement?
I mean, my feeling is pretty good, so no.
Yeah, I figured I'm
Um,
like, yeah, what else is
yeah,
there aside from just continuing to train, right? Like there doesn't really seem to be any other variables.
yeah. I mean, yeah. That's really the biggest one, and maybe the only one is just getting faster. But I don't. I think a lot of my training blocks haven't really been that great as far as training to get my threshold pace faster. I mean, like I would want it to. I haven't been able to have those quality sessions consistently over a full training block. And I've been able to have good long runs and be able to hold my marathon pace relative to my threshold, like have that be really good so I could still be a fairly competitive marathoner. But um I think I think just in like really like 8 to 10 weeks, I made a pretty decent jump as far as like my threshold pace and those like that right around 440 or slightly under, like that pace being more comfortable and just being more fit at that pace. So I think like as those training blocks start to stack up, then some speed can come down and I can be um yeah, and maybe like can knock off a minute and then knock off another minute. And it's not necessarily gonna happen all at once. Um, but and then I think one I've been trying to kind of take a long term. I mean, this is something like I don't know, but it's a big factor, but also it's a factor that I don't know what is possible or not. And that's, it's with weight. I mean, realistically, I'm a heavy marathoner. You know, for a normal person, obviously I'm not, but for a marathoner, just it just is what it is. You know, my BMI is close to 22, which I th probably hold the world record for a BMI of 22, I think. Um, so so I've been trying to just eat basically more sugar, more carbohydrates, more just like almost overfueling, and just kind of long term, really getting my metabolism as high as possible just by like being really well uh fueled like with carbs predominantly. And like, you know, in all my workouts, well, I mean, sometimes I'll intentionally do some fasted stuff like early in a training block because there's some benefits, but for all my like intense stuff, like taking a lot of like just gels and just feeling high. And so it kind of takes a while to get your metabol like your just kind of like your baseline metabolism a little bit higher. Especially like in, you know, in college and just kind of like yeah, pretty much through a lot of college, like trying to like manage weight didn't really do it that well, and maybe it didn't have like a lot of like bad negative consequences, but probably my metabolism maybe wasn't quite as high as maybe some other like um elite runners just because I had kind of maybe messed it up with not necessarily under feeling where I couldn't perform, but it wasn't necessarily optimal feeling to where like my body started to conserve energy. And so your resting metabolic rate drops a little bit. Your, you know, maybe your hormones and your thyroid, like they're still fine. They're not going to be clinically low, but they're just not like as good as they could be. Um, and makes, you know, kind of holding on weight a little bit easier. And like, so yeah, so that could be an avenue. Like if my body's just fully good, and like just like healthy and just like revving, you know, just a very revving metabolism that's can handle lots of high training and high intensity, kind of like I've been doing more of, and then, you know, a few pounds just kind of naturally come off. That can be worth a lot in a marathon. Like I think, you know, if all things are equal and I go from 140 pounds like I am right now to 133 to 135, but it's eating the same, it's you know, having as much fuel as possible, but it just results in that weight being lower, then I'm probably gonna run really fast because that's just physics. That's a big jump. But again, that can't really be forced. I mean, there's things you can do like nutritionally and like dial that in, um, but I feel like I mean I have it. It's you also can't, yeah, you just can't force it because I've kind of tried, and sometimes the harder you try, the worse it is. So, um, yeah, so that could be an avenue. That could be that's a potential there, right? Like I don't know if it's possible, but I would still be on the higher side of weight and BMIs for most all marathoners, even if I was 133 to 135. And then my speed would probably, like my threshold pace would just naturally be a little bit better. And as a side note, that's probably why I'm pretty good longer. Like if you look at ultra runners, you look at the people, holy cow, how did I just blank on his name? Guy that sets all the records. The
Walmsley?
24-hour guy. Okay,
Kostelnik?
no, yeah, oh my goodness. I know this guy's name. I don't know why I'm not.
It'll come back to you.
I'm very tired. The guy that has a 24-hour record, uh, the all literally all the ultra records.
I'm looking it up. Alexander Sorkin.
Yes. Like he kind of looks like me. Like he's a little bit big, like those slightly bigger guys, but they're still, I mean, relative to normal people, they're not big, but they do better kind of in those longer type things and a little bit more muscle mass. You just don't break down. And so, yeah, like I would probably be pretty good in the 100K right now, but when you get down to the marathon, like those body types are different. And so there's yeah, that's just a reality.
I guess not to stress on the weight element because I'm sure people can twist it or misunderstand it. Did you race at
Yeah.
140 for the trials, Boston, Chicago, New York, or did it fluctuate?
Yeah, it's been relatively stable. So, yeah, the past few years I've been racing right around there. But I've been I don't know, I've never like fully tracked my calorie intake, but my intentional carb intake, my intentional just pure simple carbs like sugar, like gels or even drinking lemonade or whatever, like that which marathon training, high athlete training isn't necessarily the same diet as like sitting on the couch
Yeah,
diet,
what are you
So
taking in the race? Like what are you aiming for? And
I try to take over 100 grams of carbs per hour. So I have precision hydration gels. They're 30 grams per gel. And then, you get 7 or 8 bottles. And so I don't always take the last gel like at 40K if we get one at 40K, but I take at least 7 gels. Sometimes may sip on the eighth one. So I'm getting about 210 grams of carbs in during the race. And I'm also having a carb or a 30-gram carb, the same 30-gram gel. I'm sipping that on the race line. So um, yeah. But just like yeah, my weight's been about the same, but my overall carbohydrate intake and even simple sugar intake and all that has been higher. Um, but my weight is the same. So hopefully, I feel like maybe my metabolism is a little bit better in that sense. And I felt like I felt really good doing the double workouts. Like I could do 8 miles of pretty good 8 to 10 miles of pretty good work in the morning, and then come back and do another 5 or 6 miles of pretty good work in the afternoon. And like energy levels, I feel pretty good. I can read the system pretty well. So, um, yeah. So I think, but those changes take a little bit of time. So, maybe, but I'm also gonna get older, so I don't know. But maybe like it'll be maybe 137 may come natural at some point. I'm never gonna be, the like what Ryan Hall like, some of the I'm never gonna my body type's always gonna be what it is, but I could be a little bit I could still be optimal, maybe a few pounds less, and again, if all things were equal, physics wise, that's would be faster.
you could shoot to be Ryan Hall 2024 after you're retired. The bigger Ryan Hall.
Yeah, my wife, she says I'm, and I I easily could. Like I do a couple sets of push-ups, and my chest, it just goes into muscle building mode right away. Uh my trap I my traps can grow almost instantaneously. Like if I just do some shrugs here, like just boom, like every chemical signal for protein synthesis and building like it just goes. My body loves to put on some upper body muscle. Not that I'd be like, jacked, but like whatever I am right now, like my body's like this isn't these are not our genetics. Like our genetic expression is like let's lift some weights, let's put on some upper body mass. Like that's just naturally how I am. So yeah, I'm sure at some point I'll do a little bit more lifting and mass building, but I think I'm always going to want to run. I'm always going to want to be able to run somewhat fast. So I think like I can be like 150 just and have a very nice blend of like, oh, there's some definition there, but I can still run, I can still run like 218, 220 and like have a good time. Yeah.
I love that. It's always a constant science experiment with you, CJ. All right. One quick thing is that, and I've for some reason I'm like the only person who like paid attention to this and is harping on it after New York because it's the conclusion of like the World Marathon Majors. But the World Championship standard obviously got super tough for 2026 or 2025, I'm sorry. You're number 2 on the descending order list for 2024 behind Connor since I think the window opened. Every other person, I guess, like it depends on you hitting the standard or getting your world ranking up into the quota. or placing top five at a major marathon. But is it that world championship to fall marathon double something you would consider for next year? The
I
world
mean, yeah, I've
championship
already
one
thought
is
about this. Yeah,
what's that?
yeah, I've already thought about this when I looked up the qualifying system.
Yeah, what's your plan then? In the
Um,
ideal world where you qualify.
yeah, I mean, I'd qualify and then do a fall marathon. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm not sure which one. In my mind, well, it kind of depends on how I haven't looked at when New York, what weekend it is. I know for our cross country team, we host regionals next year, so it can't line up on that weekend because I mean, this time it didn't line up. Every once in a while, like I can miss a meet, but I definitely can't miss a meet if we're hosting because I have to do all the work. So, but I mean, in my mind, like Tokyo and Chicago, it
That's
would
that's
be,
really close.
I think it'd be 3 weeks, which literally just did,
Uh,
but um, it might be four. I don't know the exact day of the marathon at World Champs, but
Tokyo, New
I'm
York.
anticipating what?
Tokyo, New York, you could do. That's more than enough time for you. Then
Yeah,
again,
I think
depending
it's
on the cross
easier.
country
I think
schedule.
it's easier with a shorter amount of time. I think there's an awkward amount of time. When you get to like 6 to 8 weeks, it's harder. Like 3 weeks was easy. 3 weeks probably probably ideal. Maybe 2 weeks is a little bit too short, but 3 weeks is probably ideal. Maybe 4 weeks could have been ideal, but I was ready to race. Like I didn't really want to go another week of training necessarily. But when you get to 6 to 8 weeks, it's like I don't know. The more isn't better. I think 3 weeks is honestly was the perfect amount because I got back into it. You kind of take a few days to recover, and then you can kind of get into it, and then like you're like ready to go. I mean, you're fit, and so you don't necessarily want to like extend things out too long, and like you can only train for so long. So, um, I think if I haven't have they come out with the World Championships course, I don't know, but I'm assuming it's going to be somewhat flat. Like I don't think it's going to be like Paris, and the Tokyo Marathon's flat. So I just assume that the marathon course at World Champs will be relatively flat. So, um, a double there with two flat courses. I mean, the only hard part is the travel, really. Like the running part, but people on the track do it all the time. I mean, what Josh Kerr just he ran whatever race and then literally flew to New York the next day and won Fifth Ave. I mean, those guys are probably better at handling the travel because they've done it a lot more, but the running, the running part is just not, I don't know. It's not really not gonna say it's not a factor, but it's 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 definitely doable, and uh I think two flat courses sound easy, and I feel like if you're fit for one, you're gonna be fit for the other. So, um,
Sounds like you'll do
yeah.
it.
So yeah, I'll definitely talk. I'll have to, do negotiations and stuff. But yeah, I don't feel like for me, I'm excited. Like if I qualify for World Championships, like I'm going, and I feel like I don't have to be like, oh, if I do World Championships, I can't do a fall major because I can, and I feel like I can race. I don't think that in my mind, like if if I'm a race coordinator and I know me, like, and I know, okay, I've gotten to know CJ, I'm a race coordinator. I'm like, I want myself at the race at the fall marathon race, not because I got the publicity of being in the world champs, because is there a ton of publicity in that? I mean, n- I don't know. It's not the same. It's not the Olympics. It's not the same. But but I know like, all right, if he's training for the world champs, he's gonna be fit. So I want him at my race. I know the world champs isn't going to make him. It's not going to inhibit his performance. Like he's not going to be beat up from it and not going to be able to run. I mean, like things can always happen. Runners can always get injured. Like, I mean, I don't, but theoretically, runners, I'm just joking. I mean, I don't, but anyways, like there's always a possibility. Like you trip on a rock tomorrow, like doing nothing. So I wouldn't want myself there because I'm gonna be fit. Like I'm training for the World Championships. It's probably gonna be warm. Like that's gonna be motivating to me because it's more of an equalizer. It's where I can succeed. It's the World Championships after an Olympic year. Maybe people aren't quite as excited about it. It's late in the year, so maybe people are gonna skip them to get paid at fall majors. You know, it's like this is a race I want to show up fit for because it's gonna be probably right in my wheelhouse of being warm. Maybe it's 72 degrees and humid, maybe 75 degrees. Um, that's a race like if there's any remote possibility like I could medal, like that's the race. And so like, I'm if I'm a race director, it's like, well, I want to get whatever I want to get him right after that because I know like he's gonna be fit for that because he's gonna be motivated, he's gonna want to be it, and I know that's just gonna be another great training run for him, and he's gonna be really fit at my race 3 weeks later or 6 weeks later, whatever it is. And it was the same thing with this year doing Chicago and New York. It's like doing something that is hard or not hard, but people don't do. It's like, okay, well, this is where I have to elevate. I can't just be in mediocre shape. Like, I got to be in a great shape to where I'm fast enough to run a fast pace, go out at 2:06 pace, hold that for the most part, and come off of that feeling fine, so I can go right back into training and run as well. So it's like, and I said I would be. I think doing both of the races will actually make me better. Um, and I feel like I believe that. I feel like if I hadn't had done Chicago, I think those other groups, like the group I ran with, and maybe Colin and Ryan right behind me, I think if I hadn't been quite as fit as I was, and it wasn't didn't have that kind of like I gotta run really well, like, you know, I don't I think there's a good chance I wouldn't have ran as well in New York, if I hadn't done both and kind of forced myself to be better. So yeah,
I
so
want
I
this
don't
for you,
know how
CJ.
well, yeah.
Yeah. Hearing you talk about it and think through the whole process out loud makes it sound all that much more exciting. So I'm hoping like the rankings, or if you go out next spring and snag the qualifier, uh,
Well, I'm
then
in the 30s. I'm like ranked in when you take the top three out, I'm like in the 30s, and I think they're taking 100. So there's I mean, I'm gonna be qualified. It's gonna be very hard for me to not be top three for America. I mean, I think if Zach ran like around 208 flat and was top seven or top eight at Boston, he could maybe pass me, um but I should have enough points.
all right. Well, that makes it much more exciting.
So
Um,
lots more, and I got a sauna, so there'll be lots more heat training.
yeah,
Got like
love it.
10 months or something. I don't know.
Um, can we touch on the tribute that you posted on Instagram this morning? So I guess like for context for the listeners, so their 22-year-old Miguel Marin ran track and cross country at Clovis Community College, died in a car crash this past weekend. You got the call about it on Saturday. And I guess from what I learned from watching and reading a couple of the local news reports, he was a kid who loved running, worked two jobs to pay for college, and still found time in the day to run. You know, his family set up a GoFundMe to help with some of the expenses, and I'll link to that like in the show notes. And then you had a really touching tribute on your Instagram that you wrote, I finished well. It was probably the best I could do. Hashtag run for Miggy. We'll all be running for you. I mean, was I from Saturday on through race day, how emotional or like hard was this?
Well, yeah, I mean, it just it's a terrible, like it just sucks. I think yeah, when it happened or when I heard about it, it was like, um it was difficult because like I was very like aware of like I was racing the next day. Um and I wanted like to do well. And like I mean we talked about running all the time. I mean we talked about professional running all the time. I mean he was always following every race, everything I would do and would talk to me about my training, just like everything. And he was a very big supporter of me. And so it was it was just like one of those things was like there was like so I mean it was so heavy, but then at the same time it was like I felt like I still like I needed to do well. And the running is so hard because it's not football, it's not these big kind of emotional sports where someone gives like a pump up speech and it's like the movies or Miracle where they give some like we get all emotional and hyped up. It's like you really have to be just calm and collected and like and maybe have some passion, but it's like it's very like just like controlled in you. And so um and 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 he was a very just passionate person and very caring and had a lot of feelings. And so when we would talk about his racing, it was like that was always such a big thing, was like okay, like I know like you want to do really well, or I know you have all this going on in your life, but like we gotta just like bring everything like down. And like when you're running, when you're racing, like we just gotta be just steady, like just be steady, be stable, like and just calm everything, like all this like especially in the big moments, like when we're because you know he just really wanted to like show up for his team, like for himself and for his team in the big moments. And he just had like a lot. And so it was like just trying to work on like, all right, let's just like not overdo it and just kind of I don't know, relax, like just manage those emotions. And so I feel like just in the years of just working with him on that, it's like that's I had to like do that and not be like, all right, I'm gonna go win the New York Marathon in honor of him. It's like no, I'm not, like I'm probably not like, and I can't have that emotional mindset where I'm just gonna run super hard. Like it's like I have to do what I know is good running. Like what as a coach I've tried to instill in him and like what we've talked about together. And he would listen to all the podcasts, and he'd listen to the mindsets of I mean, he'd send me podcasts all the time of just people and like, and a lot of them would have the same mindsets I'm kind of talking about, like just finding that flow and like letting things kind of come to you. And so I knew he believed in that too. And so it was just like, okay, like I have to, I have to do that now and just, I don't know, like run how, like get in the mindset of how I know is going to give me the best performance. And it was like I knew I mean my my overall vibes were definitely like lower. Like it was still the reality like of this is hard and sad. Um, but I felt like in the race I was able to do that. And like in the kind of difficult moments, when maybe there was like decisions of like, oh, this is a marathon, this is kind of hard, this is uncomfortable. It's like I could think of him and then go back to like, okay, like kind of going back to all the things that like I told him and that like I tell my athletes like in a race, like, okay, like this is hard, like we're in a tough moment, like, but this isn't the time to like have my perceived effort go high. Like it's not the time to like dig down and try super hard. It's like figuring out how to relax, figuring out how to trick my brain, like how to make my brain think this is manageable and not slow down, like still be where I need to be and make the decision of being with the pack that I know I can be with but that's within reason, and be comfortable in that, and find a way to be comfortable in that. And so like it's just like going through all the stuff that like we practice and do for years. And I felt like I was for the most part able, um yeah, able to do that. And our team, a lot of guys were really close to him, and we're going and running our regional race this Friday. And I think it's the same thing. They want to honor him and run just really, well for him. And because like what else can we do? There's not like that's all we can do really. And so, but it's like it's the same thing. Like in honoring him, it's like there's still a like it's just practicing all these things of like getting the most out of ourselves in this situation. And like there's still a kind of a there's still tactics or ways to do that. And
Hmm.
it's difficult because it's not like a fight where you just go all out, you just like swing. It's like you still got to be like composed. And so
Yeah.
yeah.
So we'll link to the GoFundMe page in the show notes. We did actually get a couple messages from some of the guys on the team to see where we could share it. So, I encourage the listeners to, contribute if they can. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure this weekend will be pretty emotional for the team as they race. All right, CJ, to close things out, I wanted to tap into some of the questions that were submitted on Instagram. Let me pull those up right now. A lot of them probably have to do with training, as always with you. Um, let's see. I guess, oh, someone did ask, what if you did all the majors in 2025? All of them. 1 year.
I think I maybe could do it, but I probably won't. Just again because I'm teaching, coaching, I
That's
have a
true.
family. It would be I'd probably have to take a sabbatical year and do that. And it'd be a lot of travel. I mean, I think as much as like I can physically handle things, like it's a traveling's hard. At least for me it is. So that's another aspect of it. I do think Boston to London is doable
Oh
because
yeah.
it makes that travel a little bit easier for me coming from the West Coast. I fly to Boston, and then the flight from Boston to London I don't think is that bad, and you can fly right after. So I can be there Tuesday to Sunday, and adapt. And so I think that's probably the most doable one. And I think I'll probably try to do that one day because it seems reasonable to me. But all of them over the course of a year, I mean, maybe, but I'm not, definitely not in 2025 for sure, especially because world champs, but I'll probably never do that. And then now you have Sydney, so you'd have to do all seven.
Yeah. No, there's seven. You should wait till there's nine and then do all nine in 1 year.
Yeah, I don't know. Again, that's probably not going to happen.
All right. Winston Dangler asked, I want to see a documentary of him training in Japan with those 210 guys. Would Brooks pay for it? I mean, again, I guess like your personal life gets in the way of a big experimental project like this of going out to Japan and training with all those guys who are now in the 205, 206 range. Cause like there's just a surplus of those guys out there. We always do think like it'd be really cool to send an American marathoner somewhere in the 208, 210, 211 range, ship them out to Japan and see what they do after a year or two of training out there. But I feel like, all right, so dismiss the thought, I guess, on your side of things. Do you think anything all that extraordinary in Japan?
Um, I don't know. I mean, I think do I think I would be better? Probably not. I mean, I think there's the sheer numbers that they have. Like, if you took if you took everyone in the NCAA and you took everyone that just graduated the past 2 years, basically everyone that broke 28:30, which now is a ton of guys, or everyone that broke 13:45, which is I don't know, it's like hundreds now. So many people
Even
do
more
it.
guys.
But yeah, I don't know. Like if you took all those guys and just I don't know, threw them in Flagstaff. Heck, put them in Fresno. It doesn't matter. And you just like they all trained with me. What if they just all came to Fresno and trained with me? Uh, yeah, I bet we'd have a bunch of people that run pretty fast. It's just so I mean, there's just it's just numbers, um, and I don't know. But also, I mean, none of those guys are beating me. I mean, I lost the one Japanese
That's
guy, I think,
that's
in
true.
Chicago. I mean, when do any of them beat Connor or Clayton at the Olympics? Did any Japanese guys beat them?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so. They never do. So, I mean, I'm not, they have good performances. They're great runners. What they choose incredible. I mean, those races are so fun. Just to scroll through the results
Yeah.
is, I mean, I love it. Like it's, it's just cool. But it's times are times and racing is racing. And
Yeah.
so, I mean, it's cool, but at the end of the day, I mean, I think we beat them more often than not. So, um, yeah, I don't know.
You'll pass
But
on the
yeah, I'll
trip to
pass.
Japan.
And also going back to um, my athlete and coaching, uh, I think just, even the race on Sunday, it's like I feel like I do better like because of coaching and like because of like the relationships that I build with the athletes that I coach and just like what we work on. And like when you're coaching, it's like I guess you're just like more aware of everything, like how people are managing their thoughts and their feelings before races and their emotional steadiness throughout their life and their mindset throughout their life in racing, in training, all these like you're just kind of more aware of everything than when you're just an athlete. And so like when I'm like in these races in different environments or different things happen both internally in me and then externally like this type of situation. It's like I don't think I mean like people have different aspects of sport, but like for me, I feel like coaching and just being able to work with, all the athletes that I work with um enables me to be good and it has enabled me to do what I've been able to do and improve so much on what I did maybe in college or before, I was coaching. And so I think it's like maybe people are like, "Oh, well, why is he still like doing this job? Like he surely makes enough money now like running like he doesn't have to." And like I don't need to I definitely make more than enough money just running like that can be my job, but I don't necessarily think that I'd be any better. And sometimes I think that like maybe I would be better if I didn't, but then like whenever I come back to kind of the reality is like when I look at my total life, it's like this like I just I don't think I would. Like I feel like
It gives you
my
so much more
life is
fulfillment.
yeah, and it's like and it's not even that it's like pure fulfillment. It's like it is more fulfilling, but it's like it also just sincerely does make me better, I think, like makes me a better athlete. Um, and even, Miguel, like he just the way that like the way that he wanted to get better, like as a person, and as a runner, just like I mean, he was a young person, didn't have life figured out, still trying to figure himself out. I'm still trying to figure myself out. And so just like seeing him put the effort into himself that he did like I mean there were so many times like that made me like be I like I can do this like I can be be better like improving things on myself and like my emotional stability, my mental stability, like all these things I feel like improved just by like the relationship that we had. And so like it's just I don't think I could ever like leave that because it's just where I'm at in life. And yeah, so it's kind of I know these were hypothetical questions, but I'll
Yeah.
answer them literally.
All right. Last thing. We started doing this with coaches, but the last couple conversations I've had, Joe Klecker, Clayton Young, and now you, all training junkies. And so we did with coaches overrated, underrated on some of the elements of training. Some are trendy and whatnot. I want to get your thoughts and takes on if you
I'm
think
not,
that they're
I can already tell you I'm not going to be able to give you a short answer on any of them.
all right. Well,
This
we'll
would have to
try.
be a whole nother podcast, but I'll do my best.
All right. Altitude,
Depends on the event.
marathon.
5K, 10K, it's properly rated. Um, Marathon, I'm not quite sold because I feel like sea level, you recover a little bit better. You can do part of the fatigue is mechanically holding a physical pace for 26 miles or 2 or 3 hours, however long you're running. And you can get that better work in and get more of that work in. Like I can do long runs at 4:55 pace. I'm not doing that. I can't do that at altitude. Or, if I did that at altitude, it'd be at like 5:10 pace or something. So I feel like there's more cons to altitude specifically for the marathon. But those cons are like 5K, 10K, like it's more of a pure fitness type thing. And you still need efficiency at that pace, but you can split it up and you're not really that fatigue aspect of breaking down at that pace mechanically isn't as big of a factor. And um yeah, 5K, 10K though, properly rated marathon. I think guys could go down and be fine.
The Ultra G.
I don't have one, so or I've never ran on one. It depends how you use it. I think it could be interesting running more stuff on the Ultra G at like for me, like what if I did like a ton of training, at 4:30 pace on the Ultra G? Could that be beneficial? I don't know. But just running on the Ultra G in general, I mean, it just depends how you use it.
All
I
right.
mean, if you're injured, yeah, it's probably great.
Yeah. Cross
Better
training
than
while
nothing.
healthy. This is something that I think you got into like on the comment section of one of our posts when it was like all the buzz around Parker Valby's training.
Cross training, wow, depends on the event. So marathon, I mean, I mean, it depends on the course. If you're gonna run a flat marathon and you're fairly light and you got super shoes and you're strong, you do some weightlifting too. You probably don't need that much actual mileage on the ground, and you can supplement with cross training. Um, Anything less than a marathon, yeah, probably. I just don't like cross. You have to be good at cross training, but if you're good at cross training, then I don't know if it's overrated or underrated because I don't know anybody that likes cross training. I mean,
All right.
besides Parker Value, I don't know.
Yeah.
She just kind of does it of necessity. Yeah.
Double threshold.
Just uh okay, it's not overrated, but I feel like people just kind of like do things because other people do things. And then like when they're doing double threshold, like, they got to get out the lactate meters and do all the stuff. It's like I mean, like if you can't figure, I mean, for some people they need it because they don't know how to run around threshold, but there's no magic pace. Like threshold isn't magic, right? There's no like, oh, you run like people are always so concerned about recovery. Like, oh, you run 2 seconds too fast on your 1K and what, now all of a sudden I need like 2 extra days of recovery. Like that's not how it works. Like 1,500-meter runners are freaking blasting stuff. Like, I mean, when they're getting down, it's just I don't know, people just the way, but overall, good volume, being able to build volume at a pretty good pace, do more high quality work. I mean, how can that ever be overrated? So, I think it ends up being good for most people that do it. But it's
You
just the way they think about it that bugs me.
uh you kind of brought up the next one. Blood lactate testing, which this could be there's two different ones in the lab and then like in the field. One of them's more subject to error than the other.
Yeah, I mean, I okay, so
Do you do it?
no. And I've thought about it, but I have to I don't have anyone helping me, so it just logistically it just wouldn't work well enough like to do it anyways. I think for like okay, if I was I think potentially with my college athletes, maybe especially early season, maybe it could be pretty beneficial. Because it gives you like it gives us some numbers and it gives them like more it just gives them more feedback because their feedback just purely on running isn't necessarily great yet. Like I know what I can sustain. Like I don't need to take lactate measurements. Like I know what I'm running, like I know what I feel. It just like it just isn't necessary. And like the number isn't really gonna mean anything because I mean I'm either running faster or I'm not running. Like it's
Yeah.
anyways. But yeah, there's also like when you're doing it in a lab, it's like okay, let's say the lab says your threshold pace is 442 pace. Okay, well that was in the lab. Once you go outside, one, your 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 glycogen stores that day are going to affect what your threshold is. The wind's going to affect what the pace is. Uh, there's so many factors that are going to change the pace to where you're going to have like a range anyways, like maybe a 10-second range. So you're kind of just got to feel it out anyways. And then like the exact number, okay, well what if you actually get the reading 10 seconds after the rep and the other time you did it, you got it 16 seconds after the rep. Well, those are
That's
going to be
true.
different numbers. I mean, it's not and so it's I don't know. It gives you a good ballpark. I think it's cool to play with. And probably gives a lot of runners some good markers. But for like pro runners that really have been running a while and can feel out their bodies, I mean, I don't really think it changes anything. Like they should kind of know how to run.
All right. So I'm guessing it's properly rated for most people, overrated for pro runners.
Uh
You were so right. You don't
yeah,
have
yeah.
quick answers on these.
Yeah. It just depends how you use it. Like a coach could say like, no, this is really important because we're really trying to like get their threshold pace down and I know like and we're trying to figure out what they really benefit from because each runner is a little bit individual. They benefit from different things and so maybe you're working with that athlete for like, you get a new coach into your system and you want to really bring down the threshold and like so you're doing lactate measurements and you're like, oh wow, they're running, you know, we have similar conditions and they're running 440 pace with, their lactates at like 4.2 and then 2 months later, now they're running 435 pace and it's still 4.2 and we're like, okay, like this type of training worked. It got some results the results that we wanted, or maybe it didn't, and so we reassess things, and it gives them a little bit more data that, and that data will always go along with the subjective feel of the person and also race results. Like they're
hmm
they're not just going to use that one data point, right? Like they're going to be using a bunch of different stuff, but that's one part of the puzzle. And so a coach could be like, no, no, this is really important. Like, how can you say it's underrated? And so it just depends how the coach is using it and how they're fitting it into their overall training and analytical structure. So, um, yeah,
All right,
so
we
I
won't give
mean,
a hard answer on that one.
yeah, it's just a tool. I think that's what it is.
Next one may be easy. Super shoes,
They just are what they are. Like, get over it. That's what we have shoes. So, like, yeah, they're most people are probably going to run faster in the shoes we have now than the shoes we had 10 years ago. But it's a race, so just get over
overrated.
it. Yeah.
All right, BU's track.
Seems like it's pretty fast. I mean, there's there's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Like I think they did the whole study with the hydraulic things and the angles or whatever and the
The
Yeah, and then I
plywood.
think didn't New Balance make a track that was based on those principles too? So I think the track is actually fast. Like they've studied it, physics or whatever. Like it's a fast track, and then now you have freaking every single person in the world goes to BU with the intention of run fast. They're all probably backing off a little bit before that race. They're fresh. They got pacers. You got the perfect groups. They're not making the races too big or too small. Like everything's set up to run fast there. So like I mean, you could run those races at Fresno. Well, Fresno's fast. We have really fast tracks here. But I mean, like if you set up any environment, like Valencia is super fast. Valencia has a bunch of turns. Like if you ran that marathon, there's tons of turns. It's flat, but it's not necessarily like crazy fast. It's just show up to Valencia to run fast. But yeah, BU's got both. It's is fast and people want to run fast there.
Properly rated.
So properly rated, yes, it is it's fast.
Bicarb.
We were talking about bicarb this weekend. What event?
I guess like the track shows that it's properly rated. Is it overrated for the marathon? Clayton
Well,
used
I
it.
don't think people necessarily think they should use it for a marathon anyways, so I
No.
don't know. Like it's not but yeah, I mean I think it's for if you're heck even a 400 runner, 400 to 1500. I think if you haven't tried it, you're like you should. Like it's kind of
Yeah.
I would say it's irresponsible or not irresponsible, but it's yeah, no, you could say irresponsible. Like if
Yeah,
you're a coach,
some guys didn't try it until like the Olympic final.
okay, well that's dumb. I mean, you shouldn't try it in a race. But I mean, like if you're a coach, like you should know every new thing that's not obviously not drugs, but like this is like it's a legal thing. So like, and it's there's decent science behind it, and I mean, there's been science on behind it for a long time. So you should at least try it, and it might not work for everybody. Some pro athletes might be like a professional 1500-meter runner or 800-meter runner. Their buffering abilities are probably very, very, very good anyways. So how much benefit are they getting? Are they even getting any? I don't know. But in theory, it's pretty good. So I would at least try it. Um, I would say for me, like if I ran a mile, I would expect I'd get a pretty good benefit because I don't do a lot of that type of work. My buffering ability isn't super great. So getting a little bit of aid there with the bicarb would probably be a benefit for me and I tell people to try it. For the marathon, I've used to use it before races, kind of like the sodium load, but it also you can kind of be a little bit heavier with it because you retain a lot of water. So now I haven't used it, and I raced fast. Well, I raced faster these past or in Chicago, and I didn't use it. So yeah, now I just use it for like really hard workouts, and I think I feel better at like if I try to do a VO2 max workout, um, it's like under 2 mile pace, whatever my 2 mile pace is, I don't race anymore. But uh, I do feel like you don't feel quite as like ugh, just awful after the session, and I can come back from that session a little better. So it's just another tool, and it depends how you use it. But for middle distance, definitely is not overrated. Well,
Uh,
I don't know, but you should try it and
yeah.
see.
All right, two more. Weightlifting.
Um, it's not overrated. That's another thing that you should be doing. You should be doing somewhat of, and the degree of weightlifting could be overrated, but it's not the weightlifting itself. It's just like I don't know. Like it really depends what you're doing in weightlifting. Because you could weightlift with no benefit, but you could weightlift with a ton of benefit. Weightlifting for junior high, basically everyone starting puberty, going through puberty, extremely underrated. Every 13 to 15-year-old girl that thinks they may run at some point in their life should be lifting and jumping off boxes and landing and just like I just cannot wait for my daughter to just be lifting. I mean, we'll make it fun, I'm not going to be this like body, but like just lifting and jumping around and just getting strong and promoting bone density. Like that is so underrated. I don't like, yeah, I think that can be a huge, like when you talk about like the growth of women's sports, like, when you have like 14-year-old girls like, you know, deadlifting 200 pounds and it's just normal, like then you're gonna see some fast runners because they're gonna be able to run whatever mileage they want to run. They're gonna be strong. I mean, not to say that women aren't strong right now, but it's just like it when I was like when we were kind of growing up, like that wasn't necessarily like the culture. It's kind of like, yeah, I kind of do body weight squats or whatever, and it's like, or they thought lifting would like stunt our growth. There's all this weird stuff. And it's like that is just not true at all. And like there's so much low-hanging fruit for like increasing strength and increasing bone density for all runners, but particularly like for women and young girls that are like that's I mean, yeah, just can anyways. I want to have a from elementary up through high school, like just a progression of like strength training, running form, all that type of stuff. So like everyone, whether they end up benefiting from it or not, everyone can run 100 to 120 miles a week. Like they can physically handle it. Now, it might not be beneficial for everybody. Like that might not be how they reach their peak 5K performance. But if they wanted to, they're not going to get hurt. They're not going to get stress fractures. Like everyone can do that. But like most people, when they're young, they aren't trained. They're not doing stuff that it's going to allow them to do that when they're older. So sorry, got in a whole another thing. But
Underrated.
yeah, we'll say underrated, sure. But I don't really do a whole lot of weight training, so but I've done throughout my life, I've done a lot of strength training work. So especially when I was younger, like I lifted a ton of weights when I was going through puberty, essentially like junior high, freshman year of high school. Like I lifted a ton. I was playing basketball, I was jumping, I was doing all this stuff. Um, and then I lift less and less, but now I've changed my lifting to where I'm still lifting, but I'm doing different stuff and I'm playing with different muscle lengths and getting myself in different positions that I don't necessarily get in, but that I do need to be in for running, like just different internal, external rotation things, getting strong like in more lengthened positions. So, because a lot of times you get hurt when your muscle's in a more lengthened position and it's a little bit weaker there. So like especially people that are actually kind of flexible and they do a lot of stretching and they can get their muscles in a lengthened position. Well, if it's not strong there, you're vulnerable. And so you need to be strengthened in that position. So I've been playing around with different stuff and taking some things from people and trying it, but I'm not lifting like hours a week, multiple times a week. So
All right, last one. Soft surfaces.
I do 0% of my running on soft surfaces.
So overrated.
So, I mean, I'm not going to say it's overrated, but again, if we go back to my previous answer, you should be able to run on hard surface every day and be fine. If you can't, well, you can't go back to when you're 14 and change your life, so you gotta deal with it now, but um, you know, I don't know. I
You're
hate
so
grass.
right.
I'm not running on grass. I don't even like dirt. Yeah.
You were so right. We could probably do 3 more hours on so many more elements of training. But CJ, I appreciate you taking the time to recap this incredible year that you had in marathoning, which apparently might not be over. And, there's still a couple more weeks in 2024. If you run another marathon, I won't be shocked. And I'm looking forward to seeing what what else you have in store in 2025 because this is a big step forward for you, and it's been really cool to follow along in the journey.
Yeah, thanks. I'm excited for it too. And the best part is you never know where it's gonna go. I never thought I would run. First, I never thought I'd run 210. Definitely didn't think I'd run 208, and now I hope I run a whole heck of a lot faster than that. So
Yeah, you've come a long way since what, 217 and 2018. And look
yeah,
at you now.
yeah.